Welcome back to the Working Fans Podcast, episode 211. I am here with the man called Dave, AJ Strangebrew, and we had a big loss in wrestling this week. Terry Funk died a couple days ago. Guys, why don't you share some Terry Funk stories, thoughts? Let's kick off this tribute.
All right, I'll go first. I think in since we've had this show, I've talked almost about nauseum, almost probably, how much Flair and Funk was one of my favorite all-time feuds in '89. It's ironic because even before Funk's death this week, I stumbled upon a video of him in his first debut in the WWF at the time, where he starts beating up the ring attendant who basically put on his cowboy hat. And it was always interesting to me because that was the first time I saw Terry, and he just something about Terry Funk drew you in. Like, I didn't even, as a kid, I don't know what's going on, but there's something to draw me in to the point I thought about this week. I've mentioned before, AJ knows this, about Kamala, Abdullah the Butcher, guys that scared me because of appearance. There were three guys on the top of my list who didn't look like a savage. But the way they talked and the way they acted and the way they carried themselves made them scary.
Brian Adias.
Dr. D. David Schultz, Rowdy Piper, and Terry Funk. There was just something about Funk, the way he talked. You go back to those old TNT segments with Vince and Lord Alfred Hayes, and they're in some like bar where it's supposed to be kind of fun. And it's the way Funk talks to Alfred Hayes. There's a little racial tones too during Funk around this time, but he's a scary, scary man. The way he was very believable.
The thing about Terry Funk's character is that he added those racial tones in there because it was part of the character. I want to be clear about something. Terry Funk, through the years, worked with many African American talents, worked with promotions all around the world. He was big in Japan, wrestled in Puerto Rico, throughout a lot of different areas. And one of the things he was always known for was being a part of the locker room and being somebody always willing to help everybody. So I do want to clarify that that was very much just part of the character and not part of who Terry Funk was. My first memories of Terry Funk are a little bit different. I do remember that time that Dave was talking about, but the first time I ever saw Terry Funk was actually going against Dusty Rhodes in Florida Championship Wrestling. And he was playing a maniac already. Don't get me wrong. He was playing the same character that he was playing in the WWE, but it was more of just that Funk versus Rhodes, Texas versus Texas feud. And they both were insane in that feud. I
think probably, if not the first time that I saw Terry Funk was in WWE, it was on the ICP's Stranglemania tapes. And even though the tapes are hilarious with the commentary they do, watching Terry Funk in these very extreme, bloody matches, he was kind of like the forefather of that overly extreme style that we have now.
He was the first person I saw ever use a table the way that we use it now. When he attempted to put Ric Flair through the table, at that point they did not know that it's a good idea to pre-break tables, and hence them both bouncing off of the table and probably causing more damage than they needed to.
But I just watched that this morning. That was disgusting. And even Jim Ross talking about Ric Flair's neck going to the side and really selling it. It was, and I mean,
especially those
about that angle. How
we got to remember, those of us who were fans in that era too, we were all well aware of the fact that Ric Flair had come back from a broken back from an airplane crash.
Right.
So to now have his neck possibly broken in this angle, it was absolutely terrifying as a young child.
Realism. We talked about it before. That angle. How many times, I'll give you 2 points. How many times did, when you were a kid, your mom tell you, don't play with plastic bags. Don't put plastic bags on your face. You know, you're going to suffocate. Terry Funk took a plastic bag, wrapped it around Ric Flair's head, and at the point they actually had to apologize for this afterwards on WCW Saturday Night.
Well, one
Later
of the things,
on, famous I
one of
Quit match. I was just going to say, AJ, real quick. I remember when they have the microphone, which was such a great touch and revolutionary for the time. Funk is slapping Ric Flair in the head before he pile drives him and says, "You remember your neck, Flair? You remember your neck? You remember the crash?" All very real. And Funk talks about that in his book, where it's all about doing that little thing to make you doubt whether this is real or not.
well, another thing is that one of the most annoying things being a wrestling fan is that every person who's not a wrestling fan thinks they're a genius, and the first thing they want to tell you is that it's not real, right?
Right.
And that's always a fun conversation. But when you watch an angle like that, and that belief, or that, hey, I know this isn't real, goes away. That's the magic of wrestling, and that's the magic of Terry Funk. And you never knew with Terry Funk, you could never say that's not real. No matter where he wrestled, no matter what he was doing, whether you were terrified he was going to hurt Hulk Hogan, whether you were terrified he was going to hurt the Junkyard Dog, Ric Flair, not once did anybody ever go, that shit's not real.
Right. And just
Yes,
look
he
what
was. He was an innovator of wrestling, not only in the United States, but also in Japan.
For sure.
Wrestling god in Japan.
Yeah, one of the most famous. When you look at the top, I was just listening. I think W.H. Park talked about this on Post Wrestling. When you look, he'd say probably top three, like Brody, Hansen, Funk are probably like your most famous American wrestlers in Japan.
I hate to say it, but it's actually the Funk brothers that are huge in Japan. For some reason, they absolutely loved Dory Funk's style of catch as catch can wrestling also. But that's a totally different story. Them as a team in Japan are still heralded as one of the greatest teams of all time.
And think about the fact that all those guys that are big in Japan from the United States, from Texas, and I don't know exactly if the Funks got everybody into Japan, but influential with it. Dory's still wrestling up until a few years ago over there. Isn't it amazing that Dory Funk is still going and that Terry Funk is gone?
I heard it was actually a work program where West Texas State University used to actually just send wrestlers straight to Japan to work. It's a nice little program.
There was so many, from West Texas State University. Crazy. Dusty, Tully. But
People forget Ted DiBiase.
Sure, we could go on and on. Sure.
Tully, yeah.
I will say, in closing too, just about Terry, other than maybe not even Flair, I can't think of anybody who went to so many different promotions and was on top or involved. Like you look, Terry was involved in the golden era with Hogan, the Attitude Era he had with Mick Foley. He was part of that, and then of course the NWA with Flair, the classic NWA where he's having classic matches with Harley Race, all his stuff in Japan, and then what he would do with ECW years later. I can't think of a guy who did more for professional wrestling as a whole than Terry Funk.
And one of the things that's really big in to go along with what you're saying is, to me, there's only two wrestlers left that put an end to our childhood, and that's Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Terry Funk is one of those last pieces to an era that unfortunately is going very quickly. And the fact that Ric Flair is still one of those people that is alive from that era is amazing to me. But it's really coming to an end very quickly.
That was well said, AJ. And moving from one wrestling death to surprisingly another. Last night, we got the news that Bray Wyatt has passed away, and this was shocking to say the least. Which one of you guys would like to go first? Dave, you want to lead off about Bray Wyatt?
I'll go because this is a little different. With Terry, it's sad. Terry was one of the greats, and as AJ says, that's part of our childhood, which is, going fast. But with Bray, on a human level, this man wasn't supposed to die yet. All right, he's younger than us. And It's one of those things when I see pictures of like his wife and his kids, and it's cliche almost, but my heart just goes out to them. Like, this is a guy so creative. You hear about all the time behind the scenes, and really, again, drawing the comparison a little bit here to like what AJ was talking about with Terry in our childhood. That's our childhood. So it's a little easier to, get wrapped up in things like that. Bray is one of those performers that, despite the fact that me and AJ would probably tell you we're both a little jaded at times, he could still wrap you in. And I know this run wasn't the biggest run, but when he initially came back at Extreme Rules and in the promo he did on SmackDown, I remember thinking, like, this guy's got the potential to be the biggest thing ever. And it's just wild and it's crazy. And he's one of those guys that we loved him. And then sometimes he'd get stuck in doing things we didn't necessarily like creative, but we always rooted for him, and we always couldn't wait till he'd come back. And we were, even just recently as a week ago, we were so excited because we heard the rumors were he was going to come back. And just to see this happen, it just feels, like a gut shot.
It's a little bit different than Jeff Hardy, because Jeff Hardy is one of those people who has had his problems with drugs and his demons or whatever. But I put them in the same thought process now, because it hurts to know or not know what could have been. And that's the difference between him and Terry Funk. Is with Terry Funk, it's a part of our childhood that's now gone. We miss that. But this is one of those stars where he was so creative, so able to go in the ring. You just wonder. We know he had been dealing with health issues. We know he was apparently on the upswing. From what we read in reports that were released with the knowledge of the family, that it was ended up being a heart attack because he had gotten ill with COVID, from what I believe.
He had exacerbated issues from COVID.
Yeah.
Exacerbated heart issues. He was starting to return. He was on the road to recovery. They were looking forward to him possibly coming back. And then yesterday, out of nowhere, he got a heart attack.
And you got to remember, that is something that a little bit runs in the family, because Barry Windham, who is his uncle, has had multiple heart attacks. It's sad. It's really one of those cases of we'll never know. Similar to, I know you remember years ago when Art Barr passed away. Art Barr was one of those people that was extremely creative, and you just never know what passed away, what could have been. And at the end of the day, this is a young man who at 36 years old was a father, a husband. And as much as we love the wrestling and don't know what could have been, we also don't know what could have been for his personal life and for his family. And my heart goes out to them, and I wish them the best.
Absolutely.
What I thought was toughest about this was Bray Wyatt was such an original thinker in wrestling when things are so formulaic. If you look back now on his cinematic match with John Cena at WrestleMania, one of the wildest things. And he took things he was interested in, horror movies, heavy metal, different influences on him, and created his own thing. And I think it was tough because for some of that time, people were really putting down the presentation of the Firefly Funhouse or how Bray was being used. And I hope now that he's gone, people will kind of respect that outside of the box thinking and celebrate it. And I just want to mention it here because from Riot Pro Josh last week, and we want to say Princess Josh, who we talk to from time to time, taking this hard. And I think that's because Bray was kind of like that mascot for those that weren't like mainstream accepted. He was almost underground, and people, juggalos, people like that, the fringes of society kind of really gravitated towards that. So it's tough to see Bray go.
Well, I think it's times like this. You mentioned Terry Funk in the tape from the Juggalos earlier.
Oh, yeah.
It's people like this who really keep you asking who's going chicken hunting.
Hey, I will say this. I had talked about believability earlier with Terry Funk, and Bray dipped into that supernatural so much, right? But if you look at original formula, the Wyatt family, when they came over, him, Harper, Rowan, and they had that creepy swamp guy, almost an evangelist cult leader like, right? And that was done with a really good sense of realism too. And if you think about like big angles from like the last 10, 15 years or so, not our childhood, not the 80s, early 90s, I can't help but think there was a point at a time when wrestling really maybe had me disenchanted a little bit. There was a group called The Shield and a group called the Wyatt family, and they were built really strong, and they faced off. And it was the first time before it became catchy that you had these two groups standing off with each other before they even touched, and everybody was chanting, "This is awesome." So the guy could go, and he had that sense of realism too.
I think we can agree that when it comes to the Shield, they've all reached their potential.
Absolutely.
They've all gone to where we thought that they would go. If there's one thing that the WWE dropped the ball on over the last decade, I think they dropped the ball with the Wyatt family. Luke Harper could have been much bigger than what he was. Sure. Tremendous wrestler. And then, of course, Bray Wyatt. I think if they would have kept him more towards the original Bray Wyatt and a little less towards the Fiend side, I think they were looking for marketability, quite frankly, with children and stuff like that. But if they had stuck with that, I think they could have gone a lot farther.
So here's something I saw recently, too, unfortunately, from a while back. Makes it a little more sad. One of the reasons why Bray actually stayed away from that original character was out of loyalty and respect to Harper, because that was kind of their thing. And he didn't feel like he could go on doing that anymore without Harper by his side.
Which is understandable.
Yeah. So,
I think
great guy. That says a lot about him. Go ahead, Joe.
Yep, that's what I was about to say. Now, RIP to the legend in Terry Funk, which I think, in wrestling years, like I heard on Wrestle Roast, Terry Funk was like 200. You don't see a wrestler make it to 80 very often. And I'm just glad he's finally at peace. Rough to hear about Bray Wyatt. Guys, I got to admit, I'm a little sapped for energy after all this death talk. I'm a little down.
Well, we're going to have...
You know what will bring you up?
Bring us up.
The number one thing to bring you up is Dubby. If you actually go to the website, use the code FANSWORKING, save yourself 10%, those energies, all the capillaries, everything, you'll be on fire. And you know what? You'll do it without being filled with jitters, because just a high quality, high energy, and it'll give you that burst that you need. And that's why I am the founder of awesomeness and the creator of excitement.
And we
remember
really
to go to w.gg, use code FANSWORKING for 10% off. And I got to tell you, I got the jitters a little bit from that shameless plug, but let's move from heartfelt tribute to wrestling preview as we talk about All In.
All In, baby. We're going to just do some predictions here. I got to tell you, AJ, some of these, I'm going to pick with my heart this time. All right? I'm going to pick not even necessarily heart, what I think should happen. All right?
So you took it out of the jar and it's pumping and it's ready to go. I got you.
All right. Let's start off with a pre-show matchup, probably the biggest pre-show matchup in a long time, maybe ever. Aussie Open defending the Ring of Honor tag titles against the main event, MJF and Adam Cole. AJ, I feel like this is going to be a turn here where something's going to happen, and that's why we're doing this, to lead people into the pay-per-view. I don't think MJF is turning, though. I think Adam Cole is actually going to be the one to turn.
I think Adam Cole's the bad guy, too. I'm with you. I agree. That's I think it's going to be a turn and I think he's actually going to end up having the Kingdom with him. I
agree. Otherwise, Robert Strong looks like a complete schmuck too, and I don't think we need to do that.
We don't need to make him look like a schmuck. All he has to do to look like a schmuck is try to get into a fight with his wife and get his ass kicked.
Jack Perry versus Hook for the FTW Championship. I don't really know.
Got to go over.
I think Hook's got to go over too, but I don't really. This is more just like gun to my head. I'm picking Hook.
Yeah, I like both of them. I think they're both great characters. I will be honest with you. What I would love to see happen is I would love to see Hook as part of the actual Combat Club.
That would be good.
But I think Hook's going over here.
I know Jack Perry has talked about retiring the FTW belt. Maybe what should happen is Hook actually wins it in front of 80,000 something fans, and he retires it because that would probably
the belt's got to go. It literally has no meaning. Don't get me wrong. I love Taz. You know I love Taz. I love what the FTW belt has meant through the years, but it's not an AEW title. Get rid of it.
And from FTW, we're going to go to FTR. All right, FTR defends the AEW World Tag Titles against the Young Bucks. Now, we know we're both huge FTR fans. Now,
I don't think they can go over.
If you asked me a few weeks ago, FTR should go over, and I want them to go over, now I have to say no to both of those. Because
I don't think they can, unfortunately, with what's going on with Cash and don't get me wrong, I'm not presuming Cash to be guilty.
No.
But unfortunately, when you're in that situation, you can't have your tag team titles on them. Right now, you have to take them off them and put them on the Bucks. Because
I'm old school, and more than anything, I like it. I think a champion should have to drop the belt. You know, I don't like tournaments. I don't like, unless it's absolutely necessary, I don't like a champion having to be stripped or withdrawn. So, yes, we have this opportunity. The Bucks should go.
Plus, it gives FTR a good payday for Cash's legal defense fund.
And I want the Bucks to go over in this situation until we know. Unless we get Cash is innocent like 24 hours before this thing starts and some breaking news comes out, then by all means. But right now,
like I said, I'm not assuming guilt here. I'm not assuming that he's guilty, but you can't take the chance as a company.
Agreed. All right, women's championship match. Hikaru Shida, Toni Storm, Dr. Britt Baker, and Saraya.
Anyone but Saraya.
I think it's going to be Saraya, possibly.
I know. That's although I would love to see Toni Storm as a 3-time, but that's not going to happen, I don't think.
Yeah.
I can't pick against Saraya.
I'll give you one. I'll give you an alternative option. Britt Baker, because she's going to join the heel group with her husband or her boyfriend, Adam Cole, later, maybe.
She definitely could. I will tell you the disappointing thing about this match is that Tony Khan originally wanted Jamie Hayter to be huge going home to Britain. And unfortunately, due to injury, obviously, she was not able to compete. So that is the sad thing about this. But I see either Britt or I see Saraya going over in this.
Same.
I say Toni Storm steals it from Saraya.
Wow.
That would be a good heel move.
Yeah. I'd like to see it. All right.
By the way, is she trying to look like Marilyn Monroe? Is that what we're going for here?
Funny you said that. I just saw somebody online. He took a video of them heckling Saraya and Toni Storm. And he actually said, "Hey, easy, Marilyn Monroe." And so then they gave him some crap, and they were having a little fun with it. But yeah, so you're not the first person to think of that too. Yeah, there is a Marilyn Monroe thing going on there. All right, in a match, I'm scared. Darby Allin and God knows what Sting will do versus Christian Cage and Swerve Strickland. You got to go with Darby and Sting, I think.
I think so. I think England is going to be off the hook though for Sting. I expect that to be one of the biggest pops of the night, to be honest with you. I think they're going to go absolutely crazy for him.
I agree. All right, the Golden Elite, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi versus Konosuke Takeshita, Bullet Club's Juice Robinson, and Jay White. So here's what I found out. Takeshita is supposed to have a match with Kenny Omega at All Out the following week.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I'm going to guess Takeshita gets the pin over Kenny Omega, and Jay White and Juice and Takeshita win. Now, what I want to have happen is Jay White actually pins Kenny Omega, and they have the match the following week.
I'm just glad with the two golden factions they didn't make this a golden shower match. And then on that note, I agree with you. I do think Takesha's got to get the win here. I think that it's important for where he's at in his development. You can't do anything to Omega to hurt him at this point. That's that whole Golden Elite team. There's nothing you can do to really. They're all bulletproof except for maybe Hangman. And then I agree with you. I think you got to.
Match number 7: Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, and Trent Beretta, and Penta El Zero versus the Blackpool Combat Club and Santana and Ortiz. I
love that they brought back Santana and Ortiz for this. I don't know if they're back full time or not. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but I love that they're back. I think they're going over.
I gotta think they're going over, unless there's
you have 2 weak links on the other team. I like the best of friends,
right?
but Chuck and Trent, either one of them can be pinned at any time by the other team.
Yeah, so could Yuta. I mean, but yeah, I think the Combat Club is going over here. So Ospreay and Jericho, this might be match tonight. Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers in the world, if you don't know,
if not the best.
I think he probably is. I got to go with Ospreay here in front of 80,000 Wembley fans.
I love Ospreay. I love the fact that he pointed out that his contract's coming up in 24 too.
Right.
That's could you imagine what a steal that would be if AEW could sign Ospreay? If I'm AEW, I'm hoping to get Ospreay.
Right.
I put him over here just for that matter. So
Sure.
I'm hoping Ospreay goes over.
Me too. CM Punk, Samoa Joe. I love me some Samoa Joe. It's not his time. CM Punk's going to go over because we're setting up a big match with Punk. I'd imagine MJF Cole. There's eventually going to be a title versus Real World Champion match.
And how interesting could it be if it is, say, Cole and the Kingdom against, and then CM Punk has to actually battle them. It's going to be a lot harder for Punk to go over 4 guys. Although here's a twist. Here's a twist that could happen. What if the Kingdom's not actually against MJF? What if they turn and MJF is actually with the Kingdom?
Very possible too. There's a lot of different ways this thing could play out. I was thinking about this, like, what if the original plan was that they were going to have us in the palm of our hands, and before things happen with FTR, we were going to get Punk and FTR facing off with the Bucks and Kenny Omega, possibly. Who knows?
Well, we also have to wonder what would have happened if Bryan Danielson didn't break his arm.
Yeah, where would he be in this card? All right.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. House of Black defending the Trios Championship against Billy Gunn and the Acclaimed. AJ.
I think Billy Gunn's going over. Billy Gunn with the Acclaim.
All right. Or he's turning.
He's turning on him.
Right. So good on them and good on Billy, because what they did was they did a classic where I would expect Billy didn't touch anybody. And as me and AJ have known over the years, that usually means they're turning. But Billy gave such a passionate speech about this being his last possible hurrah and them going for it. You also felt like, they could pull the trigger and put the belts on him. I was 50-50 on this too.
What's been the knock on Billy Gunn for most of his career?
It's most of his interviews, and he's killed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
now he's killing it. All of a sudden, we're like, where has this been for the last 30 years of 32 years? It's one of those things where he's got us in the palm of his hands.
Yeah.
We don't know which way he's going to go. That's why my prediction was the way it was. Yeah. Either he's going to turn or they're going to put the belts on him, because I don't know.
Yeah. It was well done, and this is the most well done thing on this whole show. The main event, MJF, Adam Cole. It could go several different ways. Even if Cole turns on him in the beginning, I could see MJF outsmarting him in the end and still being the heel. Who they're both heels at the end of this. I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna go with Adam Cole, because Adam Cole as a heel with a faction is Adam Cole at his best. And I'd like to see that guy back, and I'd like to see that guy with a championship.
Although the sad part is like everybody else, I love this tag team.
Yeah, me too. And you could, and I've heard too, I heard him talk about on posts too, maybe you could still do an angle where they tease it, but they don't. They hug hands, and they could turn on each other down the road.
Or they turn on each other, and they have so much admiration for both of them going heel, yes. They stay as a team.
I would love it. There's so many ways you could do this. But in the end, I'm just going to go with my heart, and I'm going to go with
Adam Cole.
Yeah.
All right. Quick note. Adam Cole and MJF were on the show Hot Ones on YouTube. Very interesting watch if you haven't checked it out. Also, I wanted to report that WWE is, I guess, increasing royalty sales for Bray Wyatt's merchandise to help support his family. So if you want to help out a family in need, you can go get Bray Wyatt gear there and support them. Or if you just want to be entertained on a rainy Sunday afternoon, there's only really one place to go. That's Wrestleville.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.